morning was The Peace Train by Cat Stevens, who now is Youssef. And that suggestion was from Annetta. So can you tell us why you chose that song?
I didn't know. I don't know how to explain to you why you would choose Cat Stevens. Like, he is such a icon of a certain generation. I don't know how to explain that. He just, oh my God, love him.
Okay. Well, he recalls my hippie days. I'll tell you that much. When I had hair down on my shoulders, if you can believe that. But yes, thank you for that suggestion. It was really great, and we'll be playing other suggestions from the interns as we move through the class. So, make sure everyone can see the screen here. All right, you can see the slide now. Yes, cool. Okay, we are in session number 2 of Civics 101 for cycle 52. First thing is I want to make sure you are getting my email. This is a formatted HTML newsletter that we send out, usually every Saturday, that gives you a little summary of the class that we just did, as well as a taste of the things coming up. And also it has links to some of the things that are brought up in the session that we just don't have time to go over, but that are interesting to you. People have raised many different points. And so what I'll often do is I'll put links in the newsletter that references or lifts up some of the points that you made, or somebody mentions an organization or something like that. And so I'll put that in there as well. So please do check your spam bots and whatnot. It could be coming from tom@trusser.com. This is from the mail tool called MailChimp. So that's the tool that we use to send you this newsletter. All right, well, big doings civic-wise in Chicago. We had an election yesterday. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand if you voted. I'm just going to assume everybody did if you do live in the city of Chicago. And it was very exciting. Our incumbent mayor, Lori Lightfoot, was defeated and will not be returning to office. Like the first time that's happened in maybe 45 or 50 years. Quite unusual. And the 2 people that will be in the runoff for the mayor of the city of Chicago, that will be on April the 4th, will be Paul Vallis, who has quite a long history of civics in this city. He worked for Mayor Daley back in the day, and he's worked all over the country, and he will be facing a man named Brandon Johnson, who was a former CPS school teacher. Then he was an organizer for the Chicago Teachers Union, but he's currently a Cook County Commissioner. So he currently holds elective office. And you can see a lot of ways to see the results, but this is one place. It's called The Tribe, TRIIBE. This is a Black-led news operation online that started a few years ago. The Tribe. It's winning a lot of awards, getting a lot of notoriety for its reporting. So that's their website there that I put a link into the chat. But you can also find good results at this site here at the Chicago Tribune. And this shows election turnout by wards. So the darker ward colorations means the higher turnout. So you can see only one ward had a turnout of at least 50% way down on the south side, but many wards across the city had very poor turnout. The overall turnout, we believe, was around 33, 32%. They're still calculating, but it's very low. So 32% turnout. Why so low? Anybody have a thought about why so low?
I think it's the fact that people don't understand the value of local politics and local elections, and the fact that local politics and local political positions like comptroller, alderman, things like that have actually more control and influence on your day-to-day life in whatever city you occupy than a presidential election. Usually, people don't tend to understand that.
People don't understand the importance of local elections. Oh my goodness. We could spend the rest of this class and every other session from now until doomsday just unpacking that observation and saying, why is that true? How do we fix it? I mean, honestly, I spent my entire adult life trying to wrestle with that problem of how to get from 32% to 60%. So what does that mean? It means like 70%, or like 2/3. Yes, we'll answer that question in a second. Which ward had the highest turnout? Why is it that so many people just are uninvolved in elections? Is it the candidates suck? Is it that they don't know? Like the theory is we just don't get it. We don't understand civics. People are discouraged. Lots of theories. But we sadly don't have time to unpack that this morning. We're going to be about 15 minutes over. So just everyone, please adjust your calendars. Larry knows we're going to go over because we have a lot to talk about. However, here's the offer. I will stop sharing. So here's the offer. If you want to arrange a separate session to just discuss the election and the issues raised, including the issues of turnout and why do people get it, they don't get it, why do some parts of the city have higher participation than others, your own experiences in voting, or all that, I invite one person to become an organizer and to call me or email me, and we'll arrange a session at your convenience. It doesn't have to be during working hours. It can be Saturday morning. It could be in the evening. We could all have pizza sort of virtually. And it'll be up to you to decide. We just, sadly, as important as the election is, we have content that's just packed from end to end that was already, approved and vetted weeks ago. So sadly, I just can't toss it, you know what I mean? Even though this election is super important. Okay, so I'll just leave that offer on the table. And let's talk about your assignment now. So I'll go back to sharing the screen here. All right, so here's your assignment. You've all identified what we call your burning issues. You've articulated a little bit about what makes you mad. You've spoken a little bit about how it impacts your life. We're going to ask you now to get very particular and specific, and you're going to pick an issue that you can articulate very clearly. So don't just tell me hunger. That's too broad. You got to narrow it down. And you're going to make a presentation in our 4th and final class on March 15th. Your presentation will be about 6 minutes long and will have to consist of the following information. So this is in all on the class website, but I'll put it into chat as well. And remember the instructions are also available to you. But we place those into the class website as well. So in the presentation, please have your name and your cycle number. Then what is your burning issue in plain English? And then we need at least 2 slides, data slides, showing or uplifting or explaining this issue of yours. So 1 slide to show, I guess you could say, the extent of the issue. So in the past, someone has picked incarceration, mass incarceration, and they showed America compared to other countries. And so there's graphs that demonstrate that. You go, oh my God, look. And you can see the power of this issue very quickly by looking at this graph. The other graph would have to be something more like a trend line to kind of tell us essentially, well, what would happen if this issue was not addressed? In other words, it's getting worse and worse, or whatever this, how you can make us care about it. And you can put more than one slide if you wish. And then I'd like you to find at least 3 groups in America that are working on this particular issue. One group must be in Chicago. One group that deals with the policy, or the, I guess you could say, the legal or the policy implications of this issue. And one organization that's kind of in your face, on the ground, you know, feisty fighting, kind of street. So give me that kind of research, if you would. And you can simply take screenshots of their websites if you wish. Put the URLs of these organizations in your presentation so that your colleagues can check them out. But here's the main point of this presentation. What I just told you is just the setup. The main meat of this presentation is your way to solve the issue. So I want you to use your civic imagination and assume money is no object, and tell us how you would actually deal with this issue in Chicago or where you live. And you could use the inspiration of the 3 groups that you found to perhaps help you out. And that's the main point of your presentation. Now, remember, making good presentations is not reading the text on the slides. We don't want you to do that. Your slides are backdrops to your storytelling. And there's some links in the material that we'll talk to about how to make great presentations. I know that you're already doing that, and you've probably thought about making presentations, and maybe you've even had a workshop on it. But bottom line is, we want you to sort of talk to us and tell us a story and advance the slides accordingly, but do not read lots of text on the slides. You will upload your presentations to SlideShare. Again, this is all in the instructions. That will require you to have a free account with SlideShare. Be sure to set the privacy settings when you upload it to allow for downloads. But you will email me the URL of your presentation. I will download it and place it into our class website. And that will be very easy for us to look at these presentations one at a time. And so what's going to happen on the last day, we'll just go in order of how I receive the presentations. We'll ask each intern to unmute. Well, actually, they'll be in person. So forgot to mention, sessions 3 and 4 will be in person. So I'll be with you at IC Stars in your office. So on your 4th day, on the 4th session, each intern will come to the front of the room and do their presentation, and I'll advance their slides. So you'll just say, next slide, please. And so I'll be your slide helper, okay? And please do rehearse. Don't be the first time up is the first time you're speaking this out loud. We need you to be tight and organized, and we'll time you at 6 minutes. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to get through everything. So that's the assignment. Are there any questions for the burning issue assignment? Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Are we citing our sources, or are we just doing this?
No. You don't have to. This is not an academic thing like you have to tell me like you got the statistics from mass incarceration from the Justice Department's report. No. You for the benefit of your colleagues, you can certainly add a last slide showing your resources. That actually is quite helpful, I think. So yeah, you don't have to, but it would be helpful if you wish to do so. Because over the years, the interns have come up with amazing information, sources that I didn't know about. And yes, it would be helpful if you just maybe added a last slide saying, sources cited, and put the URLs of, say, if it's the Justice Department or, the Ford Foundation's report on juvenile justice or whatever it may be. Absolutely could be helpful.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Now, we're going to have 30-minute civic chat sessions available for you. Again, this is extra. It's not required, but again, we have so much to talk about. I feel like sometimes I cut you off, and I don't mean to do that. It's just we just don't have enough time. So I placed into the chat a link to my calendar. So if anybody wants to have a private conversation about any of the issues raised in our class, or anything politics or anything civics, or you want to know who I backed in the mayor's race or any stuff like that we just don't have time to talk about, use the link, grab 30 minutes, it'll show up on my calendar, and we'll do a private Zoom session at your leisure. Again, not required, but I do want to make that available to you because there's so many interesting people in the session. You guys have so much experience. I don't get a chance to know you, so I'm kind of losing. You're spending a lot of time with each other, and you know each other pretty well at this point. So, okay, take advantage of that if you wish. But now, before we move on to the next civic domain, which, as you may remember, is now civic brain, I think we need to pause a moment and think about something that's very key to the issue of civic life, and that is the concept of public. So I'm putting the word public into the chat, and I'd like people to just put into the chat the first thing that comes to your mind when I say the word public. You can also unmute yourself and just say what comes in your mind. I see community, great for the people. Anybody want to unmute and just say what comes to your mind? I say public, you think what?
Open source.
Open source. Say what that means. What does that mean?
Like when something becomes public, it's available for everybody, and everybody can use it one way or another.
Right. So it's the opposite of copyright. So if I do a piece of software or I write a book or what have you, I publish a song, it's copyrighted, it's Tom Tresser, I own it, right? You can use it, but you got to pay. So if you play my song on the radio, you got to pay me 15 cents or whatever it is, right? If you want my book, you got to buy it in the store. You can't just steal it. But open source is the opposite. Okay. Anybody else? I see some good things in the chat.
I can say just open.
Open.
Open for everybody, yeah.
Open for all. So that to me means it's available and accessible, right?
Right.
So if it's private, like say a gym, right? If you belong to a gym, you pay dues, right? A fee, and you could go to the gym and use the equipment. Maybe there's a class, etc. Maybe there's a pool in the gym, but you paid for it. Now, what about I don't have the money? I can't go to the gym, right? So the idea that maybe there are things that are available to all without pay. So what things are available to all in the city of Chicago? That has the word public in it.
Personally, I think about land, like parks. I've been to several public parks. So
Yes.
like land, personally.
Yes. I love the parks of Chicago. I love the beach. I love to go in the water. I'm a beach bunny. So, we got the community centers. Yes, there are community centers. What else is public?
In my area, we can use free swimming pool on
Pool?
summer
Yeah.
in park.
Yeah. Well, what's the biggest single piece of public in Chicago? Schools. Yes. Yes. So I'm a product of the public schools of New York City. So I learned, how to spell. I learned my right from my left, in public schools. My mother was a public school teacher in New York City for 25 years. My wife was a public school teacher in Massachusetts. What else? Anything else when you think about public? Greater good, yeah. Now, COVID has been in the news for years. I hope nobody got COVID on this call, but I did get COVID, so did my wife. And it could be that some people in this call got COVID, and it could be that some people, sadly, or God forbid, maybe you even lost friends and family from COVID. So what does the word public have to do with COVID?
A lot of these public places were shut down during the pandemic.
Yeah, public access impacted, right? Including mass transit, which is public. But what about public health? Do you think America reacted with enough power to the pandemic? Do you think our public health services was up to the challenge?
Not at all.
Yes, I think they were, but it wasn't power. It was expediency from my perspective.
Okay. So you could say, did our public health service meet the challenge? Now, we could have a whole conversation on that, but I just wanted to give you a sense of this word public, which to me is absolutely critical in our conversation about civic life in America. Now, we're going to do an exercise right now and to send you into small groups in a moment, and we're going to give you a chance to discuss and surface your values and your feelings about this word public. All right? This is a real story that happened a few years ago. And here's what happened. A homeowner named Gene Kranick in Obion County, Tennessee, moved to part of the county so he could save money and he didn't have to pay a lot of taxes. And one of the taxes that he didn't have to pay covered his fire protection. So in other words, he lived in part of the county that was not covered by the fire protection services of his city. However, that city, that village, offered a service to people who lived in what they called the unincorporated part of that county, that if you wanted to have fire protection service, you would pay $75 a year. Mr. Kranick declined to pay, and this is what happened.
Kelly's Court is back in session. On the docket today, the American dream going up in flames. Charred rubble, all that's left of the Kranick family home in Tennessee. Firefighters standing and watching as flames devoured the house. Not one drop of water was sprayed on the blaze because the homeowners were late with a $75 fee for rural fire coverage.
No.
First responders started battling.
Yeah, no, there is no video showing.
Good. Thank you. We'll reshare.
Dream going up in flames.
There you go.
Rubble, all that's left of the Kranick family home in Tennessee. Firefighters standing and watching as flames devoured the house. Not one drop of water was sprayed on the blaze because the homeowners were late with a $75 fee for rural fire coverage. First responders started battling the inferno only when it jumped to the property of a neighbor who did pay the fee. So, did the Kranicks have any grounds to object? Let's ask our panel. Former prosecutor John Spilbor and Fox News legal analyst Mercedes Colwin. All right, so John, let me start with you. He didn't pay the fee. A deal's a deal. He could have paid it. They would have been there. He didn't do it.
No, this is disgusting. This was an emergency situation, Megan. This wasn't rescuing their cat from a tree. This was life and death. And I don't think that the fire department can say, hey, we had a contract and you didn't pay your measly $75 and we're going to watch, not even like just not show up. Watch as your home burns down. That's absolutely ridiculous. They could have put out the fire, sent him a bill for 10 times that or more, and it probably would have gotten paid and their house would have been saved. This is crazy.
Mercedes, how about it? Because, you know, they say, the Kranicks say that this had happened before with other homeowners, and the firefighters did show up and did put the fire out. So did they have grounds to sort of reasonably rely on that past conduct to expect it would happen again here?
Well, that's a great point, Megan, but we don't really know. What the fire department comes there and says they're not on the list, $75 is $75, but they also said, hey, if we don't adhere to this rule, then this entire fire department is going to be disbanded, because imagine if every homeowner said, you know what, there is this past conduct and they do show up and they do put out the fire. They're not going to say no to us. Eventually, no one's fires are going to be able to be put out because everyone in the community won't have a fire department. And that's why they have to to be so draconian. I'm sure that if there were lives in that home, they would have stepped in.
No,
But
they
weren't.
wouldn't, because
But
the reports are that there were 3 dogs and a cat. Now, those are lives
human
inside the home.
lives, though, Megan.
Yeah,
I
but
know, I'm
still, I
making
mean,
a
you're standing
distinction.
there. I mean, you're telling me you're going to look at the firefighters, John, and say, my 3 dogs and my cat are dying in there right now. Could you please put out the fire? And the firefighters are really able to stand there and say, you didn't pay $75.
And apparently that's what they did. So the homeowner should have rushed himself back into the house, because then apparently a life would have been in danger and they would have turned the hoses on.
Right.
This is so, we would never have a situation where an ambulance, an EMT worker would be hovering over a nearly dead body in the street and say, hey, buddy, this ride's going to cost you $800. Are you good for it before I put you in the back of the bus?
But John,
How
what
far
is
could you
that,
take it?
though?
But she raises a very good point. How far could you take this, Mercedes, where
Right.
you charge people for 911 and somebody calls and says, my child is choking, and they say, you didn't pay your fee?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds really draconian, but it has to be. The bottom line is this. If we don't adhere to this, no one's going to be safe. There are going to be lots of these phone calls. No one's going to be there to respond to them. That's why they have to adhere. Because, frankly, with all the attention that this particular article, that this show has had, you know that everyone in that community is going to be paying their $75. And that's the message. These are
Yes, they're
homeowners
going
that
to
all
pay now.
know.
You're right. But can they sue, Jonna? Can they sue based on those past experiences where they say the fire department made exceptions, and apparently the fire chief is allowed to do that on the spot but declined to do so?
I actually think they can. And not only can they sue, Megan, I have a feeling their insurance company could get involved in this and say, wait a minute, we're a third-party beneficiary of your little $75 contract, and you should have put the house out instead of letting it burn to the ground, and now they have to pay a much larger bill.
And yet, nonetheless, Mercedes, quickly, does he have anybody to blame but himself?
Oh,
Really, Mr.
exactly
Kranick?
right, Megan. Just pay the $75. He wouldn't have had this happen to him, and that's really the bottom line. He was on notice. He knew they weren't going to come to rescue. If he didn't pay it, just pay it.
Thanks, ladies. One final word
Thanks,
for our
Megan.
viewers. Legally, the fire department did nothing wrong. Mr. Kranick?
Okay. All right, so that's the case. As you can see, there's strong opinions on both sides. I think already the interns are beginning to form your own thoughts, yes or no, should they, or shouldn't they? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go into small groups right now. And small groups, breakout rooms. We're going to create 4 rooms. And so there'll be groups 1, 2, 3, and 4. Groups 1 and 3, please fashion your arguments on why they should have put the fire out. Groups 2 and 4, please fashion your arguments on why they should not have put it out. In other words, they acted properly. We'll give you 10 minutes to fashion your thoughts. We'll bring you back, and then we'll have someone from each group share your top line argument. Okay, we're coming back out of the small group work. Where the question on the table was, should the firefighters in Tennessee have put the fire out, even though the gentleman did not pay the $75 annual fee that was being asked? So you had 4 groups, 2 groups on each side of the question. So let's start with group 1. They should have. Remind yourselves of things that we discussed last class session and lift up one thing, whether it's a trait, a muscle, something that has to do with civic heart. We'll put you in the same groups and we'll have 6 minutes. No, there's no Jamboard for this. You'll just report back. Here we go. 6 minutes. We're back. All right. So let's hear from folks. What is the #1 civic heart attribute or quality? Group 1, what do you got?
Well, for our #1, we chose empathy, because without empathy, you can't have love and passion. You have to be empathetic to show that you care and that you want to help others.
Empathy. Awesome. Anybody want to add? Anybody from the group want to add to that? I love it. Thank you. Group 2, what's your #1 quality?
I
Were we
guess we
good?
could say value
Okay.
was kind of ours. Just the idea that we have to value people before we value things. And then also we spoke to how I guess when policies were created, that the values of people and a lot of what was going on at the time was white supremacy. And those were the values that were intertwined into the policies. And for us to be in 2023 and be headed in a new direction, we have to intertwine our updated values into the policies so that they're a reflection of today's society and of today's people.
Well, that requires us having a conversation about what are our values and surfacing them and acknowledging them, like, hey, I'm a racist, so now you know, right? So if I get together with my colleagues, our policies are going to come out of that, and now we know. We're not gonna hide it, and then we can have a debate like, no, I vote you down. Those policies suck. We don't want those policies, Tom. You may have believed them, but I got more votes than you, or I have more people who believe on my side. But yes, so we must surface the values and acknowledge them to say these things live, these things are true, they're happening. We can't necessarily say where they come from, like where does your love come from, or where does your racism come from? It could come from your family, from the community, you know, whatever. There's a lot of theories about where we get these things from. I mean, our parents obviously are important, where we're raised, if you're in church or not in church. All these things could be very important to how we feel what we feel. But the point is, I think what I'm hearing is we must know what those feelings are and lift them up. And then we can have a conversation about, well, I agree with that. I don't agree with it. Defend that. Let's argue, etc. Yes. Awesome. Group 3, what's the number one thing?
I think that was us. What we picked actually was the brain and also the heart. But the reason why we picked the brain was because we want to protect our ideologies. And I feel like a lot of ideologies that are out here divides people. And when we are not unified, you can't really fight against a cause or anything. And also you're protecting the heart, the empathy, the empathetic aspect of it too, because you have to understand what someone is going through in order to approach it the correct way.
That's a little confusing, Jeffrey. Can you explain that in another way?
Go ahead, Truman. Go ahead.
We always strategizing, but I can expound. We felt that we starting off with the heart. We felt like the heart is associated with feelings. You know, you have feelings or compassionate for certain issues, which you fight for, and we chose the brain for the simple fact that the brain it carries a lot of logic. I would say those two acts as an equilibrium. It balances both feelings and logic. So by having that, the brain, it shields the heart in a case of, but also like Jeffrey was saying, it's going upon you know, the ideology of certain things that we take on and believe in, and kind of trying to take a collaborative effort to uphold that in a way, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
Cool. I would reinterpret it, or I sort of, what I'm hearing is heart first, then brain.
Either or. I can go.
I'd have to say that is human nature. That's how we are wired. Now, we may want to think it's the other way around, right? We want to like say, like, I'm going to present to you my arguments for justice. Let me show you my arguments for justice, and you will be compelled to believe me. Sadly, that is not the case. We are human beings, our brains, however we got to where we are more feeling than brain. The brain, the part of our brain, of our anatomy, if you will, our structure, has come later in the life cycle of our time on Earth. And the emotion, the ability to react precedes the logic. So as people who believe in justice and policy and social change, we just have to acknowledge that that emotions are so powerful. It's not that we can't be persuaded, it's not that we can't have a good argument and you could, but we just have to know that people tend to lead with their hearts. So that's why I start there. Okay, group 4, what do you got?
We pretty much came up with the answer of a very simple answer, which is just love. It's usually just love. Like, even when you think about a lot of the people that are famous for doing this kind of stuff, like, people who are icons who do civic stuff, like Martin Luther King or people like this, they constantly spoke about it, constantly talked about it, and wrote about it, and about love. You know what I'm saying? Quotes like you say, all you need is love, make love, not war, all this stuff about love. So yeah, that's what's
well. The poets have been writing about love since we could have words, right? Since the Greeks and the Romans and the African cultures all have song about love, and every religion, yeah, don't they have? Isn't there a golden rule in just about every religion? Whatever your religion might be,
love that neighbor.
Yeah. So, anybody want to hazard a definition of what love is? I mean, it's easy to say. I know I feel it. Can you define it?
I think love
is sacrifice. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Kishana, baby.
I'm sorry, sugar. Love is compassion, love is sacrifice, love is complicated, but love is love is
You don't have to
love is understanding.
Yeah.
I think love is unconditional. You're not supposed to have conditions on it.
Unconditional.
And love is giving.
Go ahead.
Giving. Love is giving.
Can you put that into the chat? Type that in.
Give. Like you give something.
Guilty.
No,
love is trust.
No, she's saying love is giving.
She's saying love is giving.
Giving.
Got it. Thank you.
Now, I would define honestly, love is like the willingness to sacrifice for something to which you dedicated yourself. That's what I would just say, love, like the willingness to sacrifice. Because a lot of times you could tell if somebody love you by what they willing to give up or what they willing to go through for you. Yeah, you say you love me, but you won't do this.
I know it's like, I make a joke. I have 5,000 friends on Facebook, but would any of them help me change my tire if I got a flat tire? Would any of them lend me $50 if I was on hard times?
Not one of them. Not you. But they love.
Thank you. Look.
They love me. Air quotes. Would they bring me chicken soup if I was sick at home? No. So, my friends, we can have a very deep conversation. I think this is all very much on point. Now, you may think what the heck is this got to do with civic engagement and politics and organizing and, you know what I mean, social change? It has everything to do with it. Everything to do with it. You are placing some very important thumbtacks here on the bulletin board of civic life, my friends. So we're going to return to this in our third class. We're going to do some exercises. I'm going to find a way to talk about love and empathy in a manner that we could go to the love gym. So we can go to the empathy gym. So you may say, well, all this is very good. I don't feel very loving. I don't feel very empathetic today. I got a hard life. Screw you, Tom, and your lovey civics. So the question is, if that's true, and it could be true, how do we go to the empathy gym or the love gym? And how do we build that muscle? And can it be built? Is it teachable? Is it trainable? Can you get more love tomorrow than you had today if you intentionally try to seek it out and be more loving? Can you be more empathetic? Can you? Don't answer that now. You can meditate on it. But now we want to talk about something briefly called leadership. We're covering a lot of ground. So what I'd like you to do right now, we're going to switch gears and put into the chat the name of someone who you think is a great leader. I ask you to think about this. You should be prepared. Person could be
Doesn't
living
matter
or
if they're
dead.
dead or living. Okay.
Either way. Can be from any discipline, whatever that word means to you. I say leader, you think of who? I say leader, you think of who? Okay, we're getting some good ones. Oh my gosh, goodness. I haven't seen Genghis Khan in this. Fred Hampton, great leader. Marcus Garvey, Huey P, Tupac. So we're getting politicians, we're getting people who are leading in civic life, but we're also getting artists and soldiers and other kinds of national leaders. Pat Dowell is an elected official. Shirley Chisholm, I believe she was the first Black person to run for president. You know, Congresswoman from New York City. Muhammad Ali, the great athlete, leader, probably the most popular person on the whole planet while he was alive. Ali. Okay. Tiana, you put Malcolm X. Can you say why?
Well, when I grew up, we learned about Malcolm X through books and then his movie, and also too because the way he led his people, and he empowered the Black community in a way.
So how does one, when you say empowered, what does that mean? So the Black community was in a certain way before, so I guess you could say it was unempowered, you know.
Yeah.
And now Malcolm X comes and he does something, and now they have what happened there?
So I would say he empowered us to fight, because Martin Luther King was all about peace and fighting with peace, and then Malcolm X was about fighting, just to fight.
Okay, and so what did he do? So there's Malcolm X walking around. He's writing. He's talking. So how did it happen that he made you fight? What did he do?
He kept us organized. He made us
Was he teaching?
Yeah, he was teaching. He was doing speeches too. He encouraged us.
Okay, so so it's good to get specific. So I
Yeah.
use the word empowered a lot, which
Yeah.
is not a bad word, but what you just did is you kind of broke it down a little bit. It's like, okay, when someone is empowering, they're doing some things that could be teaching, it could be living a good life, like by example, right? Could be starting something, like maybe there was a soup kitchen or a class or something that I could go to, right? And then he was obviously speaking, writing,
Yeah.
and being in public. So he wasn't like in his house,
No, he wasn't. He was marching too.
Right.
Yeah.
Out in public.
Yeah.
So all those things are how it happens that the thing called empowerment happened, because of all. So you might say then that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work.
Yes.
And he paid the price, did he not?
Yeah.
He was assassinated almost 50 years ago. I mean, I think it was 50 years ago, actually. So now, let's pick someone else to tell us a little bit about, Nelson Mandela. Yes, we're going to talk about him in a second. Why is Nelson Mandela on this list? What did he do? Nelson Mandela. Talk to me about Nelson Mandela.
Mandela was trying to, wasn't Mandela fighting against apartheid?
Yep.
Okay, I was just making sure because I forget. Yeah, he was definitely a leader of peace and trying to bring justice to his people. I love Nelson Mandela, to be honest with you. His character, his poise, he just seems just such a grounded individual that you couldn't really shake, no matter when, even when they imprison him later on in his years. I don't know. He seems like a rock to me.
A rock.
Oh, man, if I could add to that, I would say that Nelson Mandela, I would say I see him as a massive, huge icon of self-sacrifice. And when I talk about love and things that you're really willing to sacrifice, that man sat in a cell for 20 some years on a false charge of imprisonment. And yeah, and he didn't break. He didn't commit suicide, go insane. He didn't, you know what I'm saying? And he maintained his innocence throughout. And so he was just such a great icon of self-sacrifice and his willingness to show through his action and through his own sacrifice of his personal self how much that cause meant to him. So that's what I would say about him.
Yeah,
definitely,
absolutely. So now we're gonna hear from somebody who knew Nelson Mandela very well. This is Archbishop Desmond Tutu, winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. And he's going to speak about a certain kind of leader, and that will set us up for further conversations in this class.
What, in your opinion, makes a good leader? What qualities?
Yes. It's a question that we've had to deal with quite a bit, looking at some of the leaders we have had who have sometimes led their countries into disastrous situations. I think ultimately you want a leader who is also a servant. I mean, really, the leader is a leader because he is a servant. When you look at some of the greatest leaders, Nelson Mandela is someone who is not in it for his own aggrandizement. He leads on behalf of, for the sake of. That is one. And it almost always is that the great leader will show just how he is, or she is a leader for the sake of the land by suffering.
A person who is a servant as well. That is
Yeah.
that is the ultimate.
For me, yes, that you are not one who is seeking self-glorification, who wants to feather his nest. Just look, say at I mean, you can look at Mother Teresa or Mahatma Gandhi, the Dalai Lama. You'll see that a great characteristic is they are doing something, sacrificial in a way for the sake of those they are serving, and suffering. Well, the Dalai Lama has been in exile for 50 years. Nelson Mandela was in jail. Mother Teresa lives with the poor. She lived with the poor. Mahatma Gandhi, you could go on. Martin Luther King. And then the great leader is someone who is inspiring, inspires his followers, her followers. Aung San Suu Kyi. I mean, she said nothing very much for 11 years, and yet she remains the only real leader in Burma. Why? That somehow the leader is encapsulates and somehow represents the best that is in the people, the aspirations of the people, and yes, it is someone who can inspire.
Okay. So that is Archbishop Desmond Tutu's take on servant leadership. So that is the model that I believe in, that I think is represented actually by the culture and practices of IC Stars itself. And here is a little chart that I will show you. Yes, here we go. So this is the 7 pillars of servant leadership. And we're not going to be able to cover it all as much as I would like to, but we will reference these. So we're talking about to be a servant leader, that you're a person of character and you put people first. So I think these are things that we're getting from the ideas that you put into the chat, these people who are leaders to you. And I think the Archbishop was trying to articulate that in order to be a servant leader, you're a person of character. You're not a greedy person. You're not in it to, as you say, feather your nest or to make a bunch of money, you know what I mean? Or to be, or to put something over on someone. And you put people first. That is to say, you don't put yourself first. Again, this is the issue of sacrifice, or of what I would call being selfless or being generous. So the degree of sacrifice is obviously great. We're not all going to be Martin Luther King. We're not all be Mother Teresa's, and that's not the point of this conversation. But I think it is true to say the kind of leaders that we're talking about that we react to are those that are putting others before themselves, which is sacrifice. I mean, let's put it this way: even if you're on the PTA and you go to a PTA meeting of your child's school, that's a sacrifice. You're not being with your children, right? You're not being with your family, and it may sound funny, but that is a sacrifice. That you're giving up something for something else. And then also related to that is you lead with moral authority. That is to say, it's not a matter of your position, your status, you have a degree, you can speak fancy words, or the color of your skin, or anything else. It's the quality of your character that gives you the ability to lead, which is another way to say, we, the people who are being led, choose to follow you. Why did Martin Luther King become a leader? It's not because he was elected. He wasn't the general of the army, right? He wasn't the head of a corporation. His character, as well as the character of Martin Luther King or of Malcolm X and the other people he put on the list, there's something about them that causes us to want to follow them. Or as the Archbishop put it, they inspire us. They want us to be better in some way. And we want that, and we agree with that, and we like that. And therefore, I opt to follow Malcolm X. I opt to follow Martin Luther King or the other people that you put on this list. Okay. They lead with moral authority. So we're going to return to these qualities in other classes. I just wanted to briefly pause and sort of connect the dots here before we cover the final part of our class today, which is the civic brain. So guess what? We're going back into small groups. We're going to use the Jamboards again. And this time, we want you to think about what kind of stuff should we know? Right? We talked about the heart. Now we're talking about knowledge. I'm going to put you in a small group for 6 minutes, same groups, and let's meet again. And this time, talk about the civic brain. Here we go. All right, we're back from our small group work talking about civic brain. So just like you guys were drilling down on the concept of the civic heart, now we are shifting to talk about knowledge and facts and context. So group one, what should be in the civic brain? What should we know? What kinds of stuff should we know?
I guess I'll take the lead on that. We were talking a lot about should know like the community and the people within the community, and also know how to effectively communicate and also listen. So that's kind of what we were thinking.
So what kinds of things should we know about our community?
Just like the needs and desires from the people of the community.
What about who they are? Demographics.
Right.
Okay, pretty basic. Who lives here? How old are they? Are they employed? So that's kind of the baseline. And then you talk about more aspirational things like so we know there's 7,000 people live here, 50% are Black, 30% are white, whatever the case may be, their incomes, what have you. Now you could say, well, what do they want? What's going on with them? What's a life for them? Okay, what else should we know? Civic brain, group one. There's lots to know.
I would say like knowing yourself.
Oh, okay. Say about that.
I feel like once you figure yourself out, you have an understanding how to help out others.
Okay, that's awesome. And when you say figure yourself out, what are you actually trying to figure out?
I guess just like basic components of how your psyche works, like where you come from, what are your needs emotionally and mentally, stuff like that.
Yeah. That is great. I'm gonna make a mark of that. We talk about at the Civic Lab, we talk about something called the cycle of liberation. Has anyone heard of that? Cycle of liberation. All right, this is a theory of social change developed by Bobby Harrow. And she says you got to start with yourself. You can't free nobody unless you free yourself. Does that make sense? Don't presume to fix me or heal me. You know what I'm saying? If you are broken, or if you don't know, as you say, if you don't know yourself. So there's a sense of that, absolutely. All right, group two, what should we know? Civic brain, what should be in there? What do we got to know?
Spoke to critical thinking skills and media literacy.
Thank you. So
policies and laws.
Well, but before you go to the policy and laws, when you say critical thinking, what do you mean?
Say critical thinking, maybe how you process issues.
Okay. I used to teach a class called Who's Lying to You Now? And it was a class on critical thinking and civic literacy. Absolutely. So when you think about media literacy, I think that's what you said. What does that mean?
Knowing how to use the media to solve your burning issue.
Thoughtfully processing information you're gaining from the kinds of media you're consuming and being able to conscientiously think about what your giving out as well.
Awesome. The famous writer Ernest Hemingway was asked, what makes a good writer? And he said, having a bullshit detector. And I often think that that's a great way to talk about media literacy or, critical thinking. How good is your BS detector? Do you know when somebody is lying to you? And asking the questions about your media is part of that. So do we believe everything that's on the internet just because it's on the internet? Do we believe everything that's even written in a newspaper necessarily? A lot of people's history has been suppressed. So it could be a textbook, right? Could be a textbook that says History of America. Does that mean it's true? So having the critical thinking skills to be able to ask some questions, namely, who sent me that message? And that's a great question to always ask yourself. If you don't know who's sending you the message, you should be suspect of it. And what would be the motive for someone sending me that message? So if you can get to those 2 points, you can then begin to make up your own mind whether I want to accept that message and hold to it, or I'm suspicious of that message. I'm not sure. You know what I mean? It's a little iffy. So you Google, I have a splitting headache, right? I Google, take care of splitting headache. Okay. And I get a website that said, take Braino. Braino is the best pills for headaches, guaranteed. And then there's a really earnest looking woman saying, I have the most splitting headaches and I take a Braino and it goes away. And you think, that's my answer, Braino. But you know what? You didn't realize that that whole thing was paid for by Procter & Gamble. Doesn't say it anywhere on the website. And they make Braino. So that's an advertisement. And you can try Braino if you want. I mean, it's a free country, but just know that it was an advertisement. It was not somebody just saying shit because they wanted to, share with you. You know what I mean? The person who gave the testimony was paid to do so. Okay. Sounds simple, but it's really quite complicated when you get to the internet, where the people sometimes don't want to tell you who put this message out there. Okay. Amazing. Now, I interrupted. You were going to say more about policies and laws. Please go on.
We spoke to understanding policies and laws so you can fight for the causes that are your burning issues, understanding history. A lot of things are repeated cycles or repeated things that we continue to go through.
Know your history, know your context. Absolutely. At the Civic Lab, we teach a class called Chicago 101 that goes back before the white man got to Chicago and covers a lot of ground. It's pretty brutal. But yes, know your context. How did we get here? We didn't happen to be here. Like, we didn't just fall from the sky. Stuff happened before we got here, I guess, is history, right? Or put it another way, who did what to who? Right? Some stuff was done to folk. It just didn't happen. And to unpack that is part of our civics. Absolutely. And a policy and a law. How does a law become a law? Well, there's a place called Springfield where people go. They're called representatives or senators, and they sit, and that's their job. They make up laws. But do they do it in a vacuum? No, they're lobbyists. There are people up in there trying to tell them what to do, putting a pen in their hands or paying them even. So how does a bill become law is absolutely true. And how can we help change those laws, aside from getting elected ourselves, which is, we'll cover that in the third class, in the third session. Okay, next group. What should be in the civic brain, please?
We spoke about psychiatry, statistics. Psychiatry, statistics, studies, history, modern innovation of society, and overall education in multiple forms.
Okay, so why is statistics in there?
Because it generally gives you information of what's going on in society. You get to see numbers. You gain more insight into what's going on in the community or in the world, basically.
True. And the purposeful collection of facts can help you understand trends. So is it the same today as it was last year? Or is it worse? Or is it better? How can you answer that unless you have those facts? So if you say, I want more children to graduate high school at a high reading level, how would you know? You got to test them. Or you have to have some way of finding out what is the reading level of the children in the 3rd grade today. They're reading at this level. Is that good, bad, or indifferent? Well, I don't know. Maybe we got to compare it to Baltimore. I don't know, Boston or France or something, you know? So if you find out all the kids of the 3rd grade are reading here, and then you find out the kids in Boston are reading here, whoa, what's going on? Or the kids in Paris are reading way up here. What's going on with that gap? And then if you say, okay, we're going to try to fix it, and we're going to do this, that, and the other thing. Now it's 2 years from now. Is it the same? You got to go back and collect those facts. So that's what we call a trend over time, but it's based on the purposeful collection of facts. There's another saying that you might often hear is that we measure what matters. Have you heard that that thought? We measure what matters, which again reflects our values. If you don't care about children, then we don't care what their reading level is, right? But if you do care about children, you might want to wonder, how are they doing? So are they healthy, unhealthy? Are they reading? Are they dropping out? Are they playing? Are they taking books out of the library? So you know what I'm saying? Your concern for children will then cause you to want to measure some stuff. But if you don't care, then you won't measure. So we say we measure what matters. Awesome. Anything else from that group before we go to the final group? Okay, good. Okay, final group. What should be in the civic brain?
We pretty much settled on 3 things, kind of general, but basically whatever community you're seeking to support or help, you should at least know the level of their political involvement or the political climate of their area. So like politics. You should at least have some familiarity with their culture as a people, so you know how to interact with them. Like you probably wouldn't go into like a Mexican neighborhood with like a MAGA hat on. Like it just wouldn't go well. So like cultural knowledge, and then also economic knowledge, because a lot of times those other 2 things are based on economics. So yeah.
Got it. So again, back to the idea of asking, observing, learning, and remembering. So you got to again have that. Again, you have that civic curiosity, that you care about the community. Otherwise, why would you ask? What the popular music is, or what your culture is, or what the foods are here? I don't care. So again, we see again how this compassion and empathy sits under a lot of these things that you're saying. So I agree with you. If I'm working in a community and I'm trying to change it or help it, and I don't know nothing about it, that's stupid. That's not going to work for anybody. So I have to learn about the community. I have to care about the community. I have to be in the community, observe, ask questions, collect the data, talk to people. So again, back to that listening thing, the willingness to listen. Okay. These are all amazing points that that you have made, and you have entered into the world of the civic brain. We'll repeat our exercise at the beginning of the next class to try to ask the question of what is the number 1 thing we should lift up and be aware of when we talk about the civic brain. As we go into our final domain in our 3rd class, which is the civic muscle. We're going to ask you to go through the same exercise, but think about activities now. and abilities, things that you should be able to do as being a successful civic player. Well, I thought we would go long, but I guess we did a good job of keeping on time. I will stop sharing now and open the floor for any comments or thoughts, because we covered a lot of ground. The floor is open. Does this make sense?
I wasn't here the first day, Tom, so I just want to ask you a question real quick. So the assignment that we have to do on the last day that you are here is pretty much what is a matter that means the most to us.
That's right. What we call your burning issue, Jeff. We asked all the interns to share with us what is the issue that bothers them the most. And since you weren't here, you might want to tell us, if you would, what's your burning issue?
Can I say that for the day of? Because I don't want no feedback right now.
Okay. All right. Well, that's the deal. Okay.
Okay.
And you can check with your colleagues to get caught up.
Okay, cool. I appreciate that.
All right. Any other thoughts before we part company?
Vote in your local elections, everybody.
Well, it's too late for that now. However, there's a runoff on April 4th. So if you live in the city of Chicago, you have at least one vote to make for the mayor. But if you live in certain parts of the city where there's an aldermanic runoff, it's still a good contest. So there are going to be, I think, at least 11 wards in which there's two people going to be running for the position of alderman. So yeah. All right. Well, excellent. Thank you all so much for jumping into all these exercises so willingly. We'll see you in 1 week, but I will be with you at IC Stars in person.